So we have the privilege of the final panel. Well, the privilege is, of course, because the best method not to fall asleep at the last panel is to be speaker or moderator. So here we are. And actually we have a group of very distinguished Europeans because we are talking about threat to Europe posed by Russia. Let me introduce Reinhard Klauczek, who is president of the Pan-European Movement in Austria and long-term partner of the Free Nations of Post-Russia Forum, and who has worked closely with Karl von Habsburg, the representative of the famous dynasty back from the empire. So he knows a lot about empires and how they fall apart. Let me introduce Juraj Mesík from Slovakia, whose experience includes working in the parliament of Czechoslovakia, in the ministry, in the World Bank, as an eco-activist, and now Juraj is an independent activist and author of the brilliant book about the Russian collapse. Strongly recommended to read it. Juraj, if you can demonstrate it. Thank you. Then we have Carlos Uriarte Sanchez from Spain, as General Secretary of the Pan-European Movement Spain. The president, congratulations. The president and professor of law. And last but not least, we have Franz Siedelmeier from Germany, who is representative CEO of the WTP private company, and who has very interesting life experience, in particular by his work in St. Petersburg, working and personally knowing Vladimir Putin. I think it was an interesting experience. And suing Russian Federation after Russia has decided to expropriate his properties and having successfully won the Siedelmeier versus Russian Federation case. We are talking today about threats to Europe posed by Russia. Let's start from the first question, the challenges posed by Russia. How do you assess them? How realistic is full-scale invasion of, or even local invasion of Russia into Europe, into European Union, because Russia is already present in Europe, in Ukraine? How realistic it is? Reinhard, let us start from you.
Well, thank you for the invitation, and to find an answer to this question, how realistic is that Russia could invade the rest of the European Union countries, because all the other neighbors besides Moldova are members of the European Union and also member of the NATO? Who believed in the full-scale invasion in, let's say, summer 2021? There was not many people who believed in that. Who believed in a full-scale invasion even in December 21, when we had about 150,000 troops around Ukraine? Think back what happened in World War II. Hitler had about 3 million men when he invaded, at that time, the Soviet Union. So it was not very realistic for everybody who thought about what does a war mean. And it happened. And that means even if we don't believe that it's realistic in the moment, we don't know what Putin is going to do tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. It is clear that he believes in, or he has the goal to restore the Soviet Empire or a Russian Empire, whatever it is. Yeah, some people think he's still thinking in the dimension of Soviet Union. Others say he's nothing else but a Russian nationalistic, imperialistic dictator. However, the threat is there. The point is not if Putin is thinking about it. The point is, are we prepared as Europeans? Are we prepared to defend ourselves? Are we prepared to realize that we have to invest, after we did not do that for 40 years, into our defense? I mean, we are starting with that. But it is also a fact that we are already in a war with Russia, or Russia is in a war with us. There were some examples given the previous panelists, the idea to kill the chief of Rheinmetall, the attack on the warehouse, the daily disinformation campaigns running over all of Europe, the influence into political parties from the left-wing old boys connection from the communist time. Putin is working on that still. At the same time, influencing the so-called populist right-wing parties in Europe, which means he is He's dividing Europe by supporting extremist parties, which is a big danger for Europe. So the threat is there, but we have to be prepared as Europeans, and we have to do more to conclude with that.
Thank you. Talking about pro-Russian leaders, let's move to Slovakia. One of the examples that how Russia is trying to take under control Europe without any military invasion. We see Slovakia, Hungary, very pro-Russian leaders of these countries. We see attempt of Russia to hack elections in Romania, fortunately stopped professionally by the government, by the Romanian leadership. We see rising numbers of the Alternative for Deutschland in Germany and so on and so on. So Russia is already doing this. Juraj, if I can ask what's happening in Slovakia, how come that during the big war, our great partners, Slovakian people, elected pro-Russian president?
Well, Slovakia is internally divided just as United States of America. Or Poland was mentioned as another example, except that in Poland there is this geopolitical consensus about Russia. It's right. The Slovakia's love affair with Russia is quite complex, and I'm not going to speak about it. But simply, the current prime minister got 23% of votes, 23% of something like 65% of participating people, and that was enough for Slovakia to get the government which is leaning towards the Russia. The previous government was opposite. Slovakia was probably the first country which provided fighter jets to Ukraine. Very few, because we didn't have many, but it was a breakthrough. So it's such a pendular politics. But yes, it illustrates nicely this divisive strategies that Russia uses in Europe, and it illustrates very well the internal weakness of democracies. Democracies are good for peace times and very bad for not peace times, for war times. We see it in very slow decision-making processes in Ukraine, while authoritarian regimes can go into war very quickly. The North Korea can send 10,000 soldiers fighting against Ukraine just like this. For no real democracy can do something like that. So we have this internal built-in challenges. We all democratic countries, and plus the people of Europe, of European Union, live in illusion of peace, despite the fact that we have several millions of Ukrainian refugees, women and children living among us. They are meeting them on a daily basis. A few years ago, I would not normally meet a Ukrainian person in Uyghur months. Today, I hear Ukrainian language on a daily basis on the streets. But it does not translate into understanding that there is this war, and this is the war against Europe. Ukraine is defending not only Ukraine. You told it, Taras. Ukraine is defending Europe, but most of Europeans do not understand it yet. If I may, you asked about this. Reinhard responded to your question about the possibility of Russia directly attacking EU or NATO member states. I think nothing better could happen. It would accelerate it would help Ukraine tremendously. I think it's a shame on us Europeans that we do not fight actually for our own freedom, and we leave all that bloody job to be done by Ukrainians. if Russians decide to attack some of EU or NATO member states, that would certainly push us to start to fight, and that would accelerate defeat of Russia. I'm pretty confident that Ukraine will win this war, but if they attack some European country or NATO member state, it will be faster. So less people in Ukraine will die.
It's a second block of my questions, but indeed, thank you. We remember the support provided by the Slovakian government and people, because even today, while having pro-Russian government, we know that Slovakia has organized one of the biggest fundraising campaign to help the Ukrainian army. So thank you for this, to all your countries. Carlos, in Spain, which is much farther from Ukrainian border, from Russia, I think the mood is even more relaxed, isn't it? Like nobody even is thinking about potential Russian attack.
I mean, in Spain, yes, we are more far away from the war in Ukraine. However, we are one of the most pro-European countries in the European Union, if not the most. And in this regard, from the beginning, the Spanish society has engaged a lot and has decided to give support. And this was crucial also for our government to be able to help Ukraine. We have shown from the beginning a lot of solidarity, because as you mentioned, the issue, we don't have direct conflicts with the Russian Federation. However, as members of the European Union and members of NATO, we need to keep solidarity, and we need also to keep unity. The unity is what makes us stronger. And this is what the Russians, they want, that we split us. And this is what we cannot do it. And in this regard, of course, we consider that we have other potential challenges, not only just in the eastern flank, but also in the south flank, because also Russians and the partners, they are involved also in the Sahel region, and they have also allies, for instance, in Algeria, and it means it could be happened a direct conflict among Morocco and Algeria as a possibility, and this is also for us a concern. However, I think that in this moment we need to support the so-called open strategic autonomy. And at the same time, we need to strengthen as much as possible, in spite of the current American administration, the transatlantic link. And we must work at the same time and at the same speed. I mean, work to be sovereign and independent strategically in security and in defense, as the Americans' friends, they demand us. This is not something new. But at the same time, we need to work in rebuild this friendship and rely on both sides, because we are a community of shared values. We advocate for Western values, for international order based in the rule of law, democracy. And this is something that we need to preserve if we want to be actors, or important actors. And here also the European Union wants to have its own voice as an international actor to shape the new international order, also with an European perspective, because We think that so this new international order will be more human if the Western values are preserved, the European values are preserved, because for us, human dignity is a key issue, and this is not respected at all by authoritarian or totalitarian regimes, as the Russian Federation is in this moment led by President Putin.
Thank you. I think dignity is the word that unites us, and thank you for this solidarity. Franz, probably the most difficult question to you. Reinhard told that we don't know what is in the head of Putin if he attacks us. Do you know what is in the head of Putin?
Hell no. Putin is someone that surrounded a little bit by the myth that he has in mind to bring back the Soviet Union. Wrong. He is famed to be a tactician, a strategist. Nothing could be further from the truth. Putin is, in a way, he shares some similarities with Donald Trump. For example, they're both stomach people. They look for a short-term effect, a short-term reaction. And if it doesn't work, they will change. They don't like to read. They like their information given to them Twitter style. They are not exactly spending hours on a desk writing up their own speeches. These are people who are enjoying wielding power. And one thing I can tell you about Putin, Putin is willing to do anything to throw us off from our footing. I think the biggest surprise with the invasion of Ukraine was not so much for the Europeans, who should have seen that thing coming. It was more or less the biggest surprise for his own people. Because now they were pariahs. They couldn't travel, they couldn't transact, they couldn't communicate. Putin managed, because of the war, to install what I call a Stalinist light type system back in Russia. Everyone is watched, including the upper echelons. Who doesn't behave, shouldn't live on a floor higher than the first, should avoid tea or whatever the case is. Putin is in the saddle. He will stay in the saddle even if they would lose the war in Ukraine. People don't understand that. There's 5 million armed personnel in Russia who will not serve a day on the front line. These are the police, parts of Rosguardia, what used to be Amon. This is the tax police, the intelligence services, any paramilitary type outfit, the Cossacks, and even Chechen battalions stationed very close to the power in Moscow. That is his security guarantee. He can afford to lose the war. Ukraine cannot.
Interesting thoughts, thank you. The second question is very short. You may answer shortly or you may elaborate. If Russia attacks any of the NATO countries, less Baltic countries, Poland, whatever, in your opinion, would the famous Article 5 be enforced? Let's start from you.
Your guess would be as good as mine. I still feel that the Europeans, ever since 2008, have not been able to deter Russia. They have not been able to deter Putin. And I would be pleasantly surprised if they would meet with unity a violation of Article 5. And I just don't know which answer to give right now. I have problems in my own government, Germany. We have a new chancellor, as you know. But in the coalition government is also the Social Democratic Party, who just formulated a manifest only 3 days ago that it's high time to discuss and negotiate with Mr. Putin about the future. And this is just amazing. That is a party who has lost the elections decisively, that now have practically dictated terms to the Christian Democrats, who actually won the elections, as as far as votes and percentages go. And we have a chancellor who, I believe, talks more than he will act. I think the discussion with the Taurus missiles is probably the best example. We have had this in the German parliament forever. The Social Democrats, Olaf Scholz, former chancellor, always said no, because that would bring us into the war as a party, namely because Western Western personnel or German personnel is needed to program these things. And Merz said the opposite for over a year, and now they still don't have them. So I'm not convinced Germany is as robust in support and military aid as they make it sound like.
Okay, Reinhard.
I remember a story Otto von Habsburg always told. This was in the end of the 90s, beginning of the new millennium. And he reported from a conversation with an old Soviet general. And this old Soviet general said to him, well, one day we'll take back the Baltic states. And then Otto von Habsburg said, yeah, and what about NATO? And then he said, okay, we take the Baltic states within 3 days. The reaction will be first protest, nothing else. And after 1 week, we go back to business as usual. So this was the pessimistic part of my answer. Now comes the optimistic part of my answer. I would say many politicians in Europe realized that Putin is not that friendly guy he pretended to be for more than 10 years. The realistic part of the answer, at the moment we are militarily not ready to give a proper answer. That's the point.
Okay, Juraj.
Yes. Okay, I will answer. I think that it would be implemented, the Article 5, because of several reasons. First reason, if it's not implemented, we will lose our capacity of defense, and we will lose our credibility. And in this regard, especially USA would lose the credibility, the international credibility, if USA doesn't support their allies. And as you know, to have a good reputation, sometimes it takes a whole life to be success in the end. But to lose a reputation, to lose the good name of a person, this can be changed from one day to another just from a mistake. Then in this regard, I think that we will implement it, the Article 5. Anyhow, it's true that we need to have an European pillar, an European stronger pillar in NATO. This is the reality. On the other hand, I mean, we are working for this so-called strategic autonomy in terms of defense. We have implemented under the umbrella of the European Union different defense projects, especially in the framework of the defense industry. But we don't have a central commander to lead a strong and massive operation, because these so-called battle groups, and this is nothing to face an aggression. Anyhow, we have capabilities for a traditional war, for a conventional war. We have capabilities. If we put together all the European forces, not just from the European Union, but from other allies like the British, the Norwegians, and so on. But for a a nuclear war, only taking into consideration the British and French umbrella, this is not enough. Because in the time of the Cold War, I mean, USA and the Soviet Union in that time, they were more or less balanced in this in the nuclear weapons. But nowadays, I mean, the Soviet Union, the Russian Federation nowadays has much nuclear capabilities, not just tactic, but all than the Europeans. Of course, the Americans, they have also nuclear capabilities in, I think, if I'm not wrong, in 5 European countries. And it makes us, with these capabilities, more potential. I don't think so that the Americans, they will bring back these capabilities to USA, but because according to different studies, the investment of money just to bring back all these capabilities from Europe and to remove all from the headquarters that they have, it would be. It means it doesn't worth it. Economically, it would be very bad in terms of investment money, and I think that they will keep this, because this is also important for the defense that we want to send to the Russian Federation as a clear signal that we are united, that we are together, face any possibility of future aggression. And this is what I think that we need to show, unity, and that we will respond if they attack one ally of NATO or one member of the European Union. But of course, this is not enough. What we need to do is also to support Ukraine as much as possible. If it's possible to win, but if it's not possible to win, unless to bring Ukraine to the position that they can have these conversations in a strong position, not in a position of weakness. And this is what we need to do, because here one important thing, and with this I will finish, it's very important that the Russian Federation, they say that they need security measures. At the same time, the Ukrainians, they say we need security measures. The Russians, they say we needn't to be afraid because they are not any kind of risk for Europeans. But we say, okay, we need also security measures, because the security is a perception, and it depends on from which eyes you see the challenge. And we feel in Europe as well not safe, because we have this risk. And I want to send a message to our American friends that it's very important in all these conversations and approaches to the war in Ukraine, also not just to engage in the conversations Ukraine, but also the European Union, and not talk among USA and Russia bilaterally. Why? Because if you want to talk not just about the peace, but also about the future relationship and the future defense and security architecture, you need to know the positions of Ukraine and the European Union, because we are those who we are going to be involved in this future relationship with the Russian Federation. And for this reason, we need to be in these conversations. This is something crucial from our European perspective.
Thank you. Uri, the floor is yours.
Yeah. The question was whether the NATO would react. First, I have 3 points. First, NATO was lucky that Russia attacked Ukraine. Would Russia attack in February 22 Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, we would have war in Poland today, because at that point NATO, it would take too long time for NATO to respond to stop Russians before they enter Poland. That's most likely scenario. Concerning the NATO response to attack in 2025, cognitively we are much better prepared to such a risk. Also technologically, technically, materially, but we still have this trap of thinking about NATO as about one organization which will jointly react to something. No, we Europeans should forget and should simply abstract from United States. United States are unpredictable. That means we cannot rely on United States involvement in such case. All response must be calculated on European countries alone, and only a part of them would respond in an appropriate way. But there is a very high probability that Poland, possibly France, possibly Great Britain, would react quickly and decisively to defend other NATO, or to help to defend other NATO countries. Probably Sweden, probably Finland. They all understand the threat now, have capability to respond, and very important, Russia is much, much, much weaker than it was 3 years ago, because this attrition war is destroying not only Russia's military capacities and human resources and their officers' corps, but it also is economically devastating in all Russian economy, except for the military production is already in deep recession. The interest rates are at the level of 20% in the Russian commercial banks. The indebtedness of all various subjects is very, very high. It is really on the brink. It is Colossus on the feet of clay. And would we be politically capable to behave more aggressively, more offensively against Russia? It would already flip. The problem is that we have this learned helplessness, we Europeans. We believe, we learned to believe Russian propaganda that Russia is invincible, it's powerful, and so on. It's not. It's falling apart. But we are paralyzed by our own fear and are not doing what we should do and what we are capable to do from technical and military perspective.
Thank you. And one final question before we move to questions. Talking about this Colossus, if it falls apart, will this be a threat for Europe? Will this be a chance for Europe? I mean, if Russia decolonizes, the processes of decolonization, disintegration begin, what will be the consequences for Europe? Uri, I see you are ready to respond.
Let me start. Russia as an imperial power is threat to Europe, and it only can be threat to Europe as an imperial power. Moscovia, which is ideological base of this imperialism and aggressiveness, would not have resources. So once the Russian Empire disintegrates, it will cease to be threat to Europe and to the world. It only can be threat as long as it has natural resources which are tapped from the occupied countries. Oil from the Yamal region, and diamonds from Yakutia, and gold from Magadan, and all that, and all those resources are not from Moscovia. They just are tunneled to Moscovia, and Moscovia, Kremlin uses it for militarization and for sustaining apparatus, repressive apparatus, and for corrupting political and intellectual elites inside empire, but also in Europe, also in United States of America. Florida condos, for instance, come to mind, and who knows what else. So once Moscovia does not have those resources, it ceases to be a threat. It doesn't mean that post-Russia territory will be territory of peace, of prosperity. There will be various scenarios. Some of the new emerging countries will be able to be prosperous, democratic, and so on. Some will struggle. But that's the reality of life. But none of them, independent Tatarstan, independent Buryatia, independent Ingria, will not be threat to Europe.
Anyone else feels like answering to this question? Everyone, yes. Carlos.
Well, in my opinion, if there is the disintegration of the Russian Federation, economically, the Russian Federation is similar to the potential of Spain, Italy. It's not so strong. But in terms of nuclear capabilities, it would be the most important concern in my regard, because of course, if there is a disintegration, it would be very important to who will be the replace of the leadership in Russia, and the nuclear capabilities under whom will be managed. Because it would be a very bad signal that it will finish in terrorist under terrorist groups' controls or non-state actors or so on. In this regard, it would be for me the most important concern. How to control and how to manage the issue of the nuclear arsenal if they failed. This would be for me the only important issue in terms of security. After that, of course, we should take care of the process and look this process closely, and even support those movements or those people that they will create new structures of civil democratic society, because they will have there also a challenge. But well, these are the two scenarios.
Thank you. Reinhard?
To quote Oleg Magaletsky in a discussion in Vienna, big Russia, big problems, small Russia, small problems. I think this is the clear answer to your question, but there is a but. And this but is that in the European political society, Russia has always been there. So Russia, nobody thinks about Russia as a colonial empire. From the Western movies from the United States, we know more about the history of Apaches and Comanches and whatever their name is than about the Buryats or the Circassians or even about Chechens, yeah, although they are in the media. And that's the point, because it was always there. Nobody wants to think about it. And if you don't think about it, you cannot imagine that it happens, and you cannot, Carlos mentioned that, you cannot imagine that it happens peacefully. And that's much more the threat for Europe than the threat is coming from an independent Buratia or whatever, a dissolved Russia, that we are not able to think in this dimension of a decolonized Russia. That's the point we have to work on.
Yeah, Franz.
I would caution a little bit. I would say don't skin the bear while it's still alive. And I think that's an issue. I mean, I can see different peoples, different nationalities in Russia wanting their independence. At the same time, let's look at the reality on the ground a little bit. You're talking about a collective memory of suppression of people over the longest period of time. Under the Tsars, under the communists, chaos in the 90s, privatization. For them, that is not a good word. This meant hunger. This meant inflation, instability, crime. Putin, when he came to power, he was sort of the possible guarantor for security, for law and order. Until, of course, he introduced a system that he learned from his former boss, Sobchak, the mayor of St. Petersburg, first democratically elected mayor, I might add, who was deeply corrupt. But there he learned the reinvention of feudalism. And feudalism means nothing else but that friends and supporters can help themselves to the riches of the country, uncontrolled, as long as they don't clash with his political will or does not clash with anyone higher in the top of the food chain. And while Russia is waging war, it's also true that while it's standing on clay feet, it's pretty big feet still. They're printing the ruble. Any manufacturing or service business that does not operate profitable anymore is taken over by the government. The workforce is actually servicing or manufacturing anything connected with the war effort. These people have full employment right now. So we are possibly years away from any wishful thought of a breakdown of the Russian Federation. Putin is still in the saddle, so I would be a bit more careful with that prediction.
I have comments as well, but I see Uri is desperate to comment, right?
At least the older of us should remember summer 1989. In summer 1989, in the communistic Europe, everything seemed like, on a solid ground. There were these 5 years plans. We were that were 110% fulfilled. We were on our way to communism. And then in November 1989, communism in Europe collapsed suddenly. From all these, powerful positions and the statements. Move 2 years forward, summer 1991, there is a referendum in Soviet Union about the reform of Soviet Union and Soviet Union keeping together. Overwhelming majorities in those parts of Soviet Unions that participated, Baltic states and Georgia did not participate at the referendum, voted, including Ukraine, including Russia, not to speak about Central Asian countries, where 99% of those voting were in favor of continuation of Soviet Union. And then in December 91, Soviet Union suddenly disappeared. Sudden changes are not only possible, they do happen. And internal weaknesses of authoritarian or totalitarian regimes are often very well masked under the external projection of power and self-confidence. So just remember that.
Short
Let's
response. and-
answer that very short. I was in Leningrad during that time. I've seen it firsthand. And the big difference here is you're dealing with an organized security structure. While nothing else might work very well in that country, that part works very well. So again, I'm just saying it's not that it cannot happen, and you're perfectly right. 1989, 91, even the intel services, no one foresaw anything that would take place. But still, we have a different situation today than we had in the chaos of those days.
Sure. History does not repeat, but sometimes rhyme.
Right, exactly.
What is very important is, of course, that there is war now, and they are not winning that war. There is very high inflation. There is big disappointment there. The Russia today is much, much weaker than was Soviet Union in 1990 in terms of population, in terms of economy, in terms of many parameters. Much stronger. Only apparatus was weaker.
Yeah, thank you for this valuable inside experience. That is like really serious input, but we can see based on this discussion how complicated this topic is. Let's open up the floor for questions from the audience. If there are any questions, comments, you are welcome. Yes, please.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I would like to comment on some of the statements, like that Russia is still strong and stuff like that. Military units at least in the eastern part of the country are completely empty now. They don't have even Kalashnikovs. I mean, soldiers, they don't even teach them to shoot because there's no weapons. The so-called the tanks, they are becoming completely obsolete right now because the character of the war is changing. We see it now that these Iskandars that cost like millions of dollars, they can be destroyed by $100 drone. And also when in 2023 Prigozhin attempted a coup, all these Russian guards, the police, the army, they were not present at all. There was a total palsy, like no one actually tried to do anything to stop them. And so Prigozhin actually stopped 100 kilometers from Moscow, probably because he didn't think about the consequences. Perhaps he didn't evacuate his family from St. Petersburg before making this move, which only, you can only have the idea of the level, intellectual level of these people, that they don't even think that far ahead. And this is just, one example. If he didn't stop, if he actually reached Moscow, nobody knows what would have happened, because all this police and army and everything, they were actually hiding. They were the police, the gendarmes, they were hiding in Petersburg and Moscow in 1917, after the February Revolution, after the suddenly there was this, very strong Russian empire, and then there was no empire. There was a collapse of power. That's why I think that all these talks about Russia being really strong, it's like sometimes when you look at something from far away, it seems grander than it is. Also, the population of Russia, it's a big myth. It's there were a lot of dead souls. All these census, they were not correct because the numbers they actually miscalculated. They made Russian population to be larger than it is, and they diminished the non-Russian populations. And it's a fact. Yes, that's.
Thank you for this great comments. Do you have a question?
I have a question that in everything that we are seeing now, do you think that there is a drift now in Europe towards embracing this new future of the space, post-Russian space? Do you think that these new states will have support?
Let's collect all questions. Thank you. Yes, there was one more question there.
Hello, Tapp Blackburn from the Institute for Defense Analysis. My question simply is looking at it, whether you look at Russia is powerful with clay feet, like France said, or whether it's a little bit weaker, as we just heard, who's still in power. The security apparatus is still strong. What are those things that we should look at to see whether cracks start to form within the clay feet that you talked about that are really big, France? And I'd open it up to the rest of the panel, obviously.
Any other questions? So if no, let's start responding. Friends, I think the first question was, and comment was referred to you, so maybe you will start.
The best thing is you look for Putin's absence. If he's gone for a week or something's afoot usually, or there's a crisis which you can't manage. So we will sit on the problem until hopefully it goes away.
You mean when all Putins are gone?
Say?
When
Exactly. That's a very good point. Exactly. And as far as embracing the peoples of the Russian in the Russian Federation that seek independence, I don't think the Europeans have even given it a thought, to be honest. I think there is the message, while it's really important, I totally understand that, but the message and the way to pass on the message has to be simplified. I think what you all of you need to do is to unite and to basically do a mutual push for this. I think you would have all the sympathies, but it's a matter of educating people. And, the world is already difficult enough, especially for the Europeans. So this is one more layer, which I think must, is worthwhile pursuing. Absolutely. It must be done, but it should be done in a maybe more uniform fashion, perhaps.
Thank you, Reinhard. So we have two questions about drift in Europe, about free nations, and what are the cracks in the Russian regime?
I cannot answer the second question. To be honest, I'm not an expert on that, but I would like to give 2 points to this question about is Europe ready to accept a dissolved Russia? Think back to the end of Yugoslavia. The message people from the new states which became independent, they heard in France, in Britain, and in other countries was, we don't want to lose World War I 80 years later or 70 years later. That was the reason why they supported for a long time Milosevic and his regime, with all the consequences. For 10 years there was war, internal war. Saying that, this is an example for what the European politicians are fearing in case Russia or Moscow breaks down. A scenario like Yugoslavia, because they themselves did not calculate with any change. So this is not in the mind of European politicians. Nobody's talking about that, even not behind closed doors. Because nobody can imagine, nobody, there are some people who are talking about that, but it's not coming into the real politics in a Ministry for Foreign Affairs or Defense or whatever it is. That's the point. That's why I said before, if we wanted, and I support this idea, because to quote again Oleg, small Russia causes small problems, then we have to do a lot of information work.
Thank you. Carlos, do you have anything to respond?
I think that one thing that we could do more is invest in the industry of the defense for technology of high added value, we could say. It means in terms of the new spaces that they are, and where we think that, for instance, Europeans, we could do more. For instance, in the satellite sector, and why I say that? Because we don't have the capabilities in this moment to produce so much munition as Russia is doing. I mean, the Europeans, because we are producing munition, but our factories must produce different munitions because we have different capabilities, and then for this reason we cannot produce the same quantity of munition as the Russians they produce, because they produce only one kind of munition, and this is a problem that we have. Then we cannot change this from one day to another. For this reason, I think that it's more intelligent to invest in high technology for defense and not thinking so much in the munition issues. This is one answer, and another answer is that
It's short.
yes, nobody's thinking in Europe about a collapse of the Russian Federation. I think that what we want is to support Ukraine, avoid that the Russian Federation wins, change when it's possible the leadership in Russia, but the collapse, as Reinhard mentioned, is always a risk, and this is something that the most important thing is to change the leadership in Russia, and if the leadership could be a democratic leadership, it could be different. But I know that the problem is that Russia is very complex. It doesn't have any democratic experience before. Doesn't have a democratic tradition, was a Tsarist empire after Soviet Union, and even the leadership could be worse than Putin, because they could be even more falcons there, like
Exactly.
for example Medvedev or other people who are even more radicals.
Exactly. I think, unfortunately, every attempt to bring democratic leader in Russia results in empire. We had Democrat Yeltsin, who launched a genocidal war against Ichkeria. We had progressive Putin, for whom all West was praying, like, okay, now he's going to change the country. We had modernizer Medvedev, under whom the Georgian war has begun. So I don't think this is the solution, and maybe Yurai can elaborate on this.
Which one? Only one solution? Which one?
The Russian dissolution.
Well, I want to return to the first question of this round, which is whether Europeans are ready for recognizing the 30% of population of current Russia are non-ethnic Russians, and we tend to ignore that reality. If we speak only from about the ethnic perspective, then we have aspirations of regions like Siberia, Urals, and other that were mentioned today for their independence. No. We see that this debate is not yet happening in the European capitals or Brussels. But again, let's go to history. Reinhard mentioned the collapse of disintegration of Yugoslavia. I will go 100% earlier. Disintegration of Austro-Hungarian Empire, German Empire, and Ottoman empires. We are in Washington on January 8th, 1918. Woodrow Wilson addressed Congress of United States of America and presented his 14 points in which he outlined what the after-war organization of the world. And at that point, the big German offensive, the summer offensive of 1918, was still ahead. Mm-hmm. And during that offensive, Germans got very close to Paris again, and then collapsed. Mm-hmm. And then in October, the row of capitulations and row of independence followed. So we are not there in Europe. We don't have that. We don't have a European Woodrow Wilsons, but it's let's take it as a challenge and let's work on that, and let's hope that some of European leaders that we will find a way how to influence their thinking and how to make them aware of the reality of internal realities of Russia.
Thank you to all for this thoughts-provoking session, this panel. I see nobody is sleeping, so I think this panel was a success. Let's give a round of applause to our speakers.